Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host George Aldridge, and today we're bringing you a double whammy of our Film Club midweek show. How Film Club works is that at the end of our main show we recommend a movie that ties in with whatever review that was at the given week. Unfortunately, due to our schedules though, we couldn't get a show out to you last week, so to make up for it, we're going to review your pick from last week, George, which was Zero Dark 30, as well as my pick from this week following our top 10 animated films of all time review, which was The Iron Giant. So, you mentioned this last time, but we'll get into the bad first. So, we'll kick off with Zero Dark 30. Just tell us why you picked it and how it tied in with the review from last week.
So, obviously we did Jurassic World, Chris Pratt, the main guy. Look at his career, he was in Zero Dark 30. It's a film I'd wanted to see for a while because obviously it's hyped up about the Bin Laden kill, all that. So, Chris Pratt's going to be in it, this should be good. It's just as he's turning from the comedian to the sort of serious guy. And then I think I waited about 2 hours. A, for him to be on screen, and B, for something interesting to happen.
Yeah, it was interesting because when you picked that at the end, you said, I think, I could have picked Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but I thought, no, that's too obvious. And I was like, damn it. And you was like, I could have picked Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's another cliched pick. I was like, damn it. And then you said that, and I was like, thinking, it was Chris Pratt actually in that movie? And you're right, he doesn't show up until really like the last 20, 30 minutes perhaps of the film, like for the final action sort of sequence of the film. You hadn't seen this film before, but I went to see this at the cinema when it came out. Obviously, there was the whole Oscar buzz around it, and at the time I was thinking, there's nothing really on at the cinema, but I'll go and check this out because it's got all this hype, and I was trying to catch up on all the Oscar films around that time. And honestly, I was bored out of my mind during this film, and I'm not entirely sure why, because if you're looking at it from a film at face value, I think it's well directed, and it's got a great cast in there, and none of the performances are really that bad. But I don't know if it's because it's usually a film that's not my kind of thing. Like, I wouldn't willingly go and see this. Like, this was just more out of curiosity because of the Oscars. I don't know. It's difficult to pinpoint where the problems with this film is, but if you want to go into like problems you had with it, and maybe we can like arrive at a conclusion with it.
Yeah, I mean, my main issue was that it was described as the hunt for Bin Laden and all of this, and then it kind of starts. It's got this great moment where the screen's black and it's just like all the 9/11 like voices and stuff. I thought it was setting in good then, but then it's kind of like this hunt for Bin Laden just seemed like coincidence when they were just randomly interrogating someone. Then he'd give them another name, then he randomly knew that person, and it didn't really seem like a hunt. It just kind of seemed that they all, oh, we actually know where he is now. I just thought it'd go into it more because that is what the selling point was. All the trailers I remember were stuff like that, but then it was. I just it seemed too coincidental for me, and it kind of summarizes Oscar season. Where you watch a film like this in January, you probably like it 10 times better. You watch it in the middle of blockbuster season, and it's just boring.
And it's difficult. I think this is probably the hardest film we've ever had to review on this channel because it's difficult to like which angle to go into it with, because obviously it's a biopic, it's a political sort of thriller almost really, but obviously if I were to recommend this film, I don't know who I'd recommend it to. If you follow the kind of story in the news of this and you're into biopics, that kind of thing, I think you'll enjoy it or get a kick out of it. But for like general moviegoer, I think it's a very plodding film, and I know this doesn't excuse it, but I think that's the point of the film because you see with Jessica Chastain's character the annoyance and the anguish of her character. Like, she wants to find Bin Laden, and there's those moments where she keeps going back to the window and writing on the window how long it's been without capturing Bin Laden. And I think you pick up on a sense of impatience with it.
Yeah, there is that bit where I wanted the end. I call it Titanic syndrome, and you're mainly watching it for the ending. I mean, it sounds bad, but that's legitimately what these films tend to do.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
But I think the build up to it, it just wasn't what I thought it'd be. It just didn't really have me interested in it. Like, don't get me wrong, like it's done well. I know there's going to be people that like it. Like Catherine Bigelow's great director. The performances are top notch and stuff, but it just it could have been a lot shorter, and then you could have got into the it would have flowed better. You would have, instead of having random interrogations, you could have had the important stuff happening. Where it just kind of seemed like there's like a coincidental bombing here. Then like they cut to the London bombings. That's a big deal, but did it have anything to do with this film? 'Cause
Yeah, it goes way, way, way back to the start, doesn't it? It could have started very closer, like just about to find him, but it shows you the whole thing, how many years it took, all of the leads they had and the dead ends they came up against, and I do admire Jessica Chastain's character in the film, and I know you mentioned before we started recording. When I was watching it, it did go through my head. I was thinking, is this actually based on a real person? But you said that it's a fictional character created just for the film, but it's based on someone similar or something like that.
yeah, I'm not clear how it's done, but for obvious reasons they wouldn't name him. But it's not like
Yeah.
Argo when there was the real guy, that exact thing. This kind of seems that they took a person, took a few things off her, added in some stuff for the film. Like there's a scene when they get there's a bombing at the base,
Mm.
and she's kind of just there chatting. Where I'd have highly doubt in real life you'd have someone chatting a minute before you're meant to meet an informant. A few little things like that. But what I do like about it is that she starts off as this like really like sort of not weak, but she's thinking all the interrogation scenes are a bit over the top.
Mm.
And then at that moment when like her friend gets like killed by a suicide bomber, then she like notches up and she becomes the tough person she finishes with, which that was great to see on screen. But
Yeah, see that there is a character arc with her, and this is what I mean. It's difficult to pinpoint the problems with it. I will admit that the first few scenes they're really tough to watch, but they're probably the most well acted scenes in the film. I'd say I actually prefer the opening scenes to the ending. But obviously, with Catherine Bigelow directing this film, this was following from her previous film, which was The Hurt Locker, which I haven't actually seen. I know that got a lot of praise as well, but I mean, so did Zero Dark Thirty, and we weren't too keen on that. It's the same kind of environment, but whereas I believe The Hurt Locker is sort of like the front lines, the bomb disposal squad, this is very much behind the scenes and all the kind of politics and intrigue that has to go into these operations that you'd see in something like The Hurt Locker.
yeah, and there's these great scenes. There's two or three of them when she's got to talk to the people higher up, etc.,
Mm.
etc. They're like bosses, and then you'll have these like detailed stuff which you can imagine happening. There's a scene where it's got Stannis from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and I obviously when I saw this film, this was before season 2 of Game of Thrones. But now I'm so into Game of Thrones that when you watch like old things back and you can pick out characters, it was amazing to see him because he just completely acts like Stannis still.
Yeah, but that scene though in itself, that's what I would expect. Like talking about the hunt for him.
Mm. Yeah.
That's them saying we think we've got him, and then he's there like, have you got the concrete evidence? Stuff like that. That's what I kind of thought you'd get maybe an hour and a bit of that, because
Mm.
that was really the Bin Laden stuff. Whereas before you'd have just these other people and just swapping names, and it really takes you out of it because you kind of thinking how long's left, stuff like that. But then I think it definitely gets better as the film goes on.
I think that actually may be one of my biggest faults with the film is that it is too long. I don't think it needed to be. I think it's like 2 hour 40 or something like that, the running time. I think you could have done this in about 2 hours, honestly. Just make it really quick paced. Because the story itself, although it's over many years, it is very simple. It's sort of like a cat and mouse chase, really, for the whole film. But there are a lot of plodding scenes. You almost see everything in every little meticulous detail possible, and that might be great for, say, like a documentary or something. If there was documentary on the hunt for Bin Laden, but in a film, you have to kind of go into it with the outlook of will this appeal to a mass audience? I mean, you may not want to as a director, but as a filmmaker and what the film market's like, that's what you have to aim for. And I think there are good moments in this film. As I said at the start, like I think the best actor in this is actually Jason Clarke. I really like his character, and he kind of has a character arc moment where he's obviously the one doing all the interrogations and the torture at the start. But then he says like he needs time away from it because he's done it for so long. And that's one of the positive things I will say about the film is it does show the grey areas on both sides, because this could have very easily have been a sort of America's the greatest, screw the opposite side. But I mean, even in the ending, where you get like the shots of the kids crying over the dead parents, there are those moments where you kind of you feel empathy and feel sorrow for the opposite side.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the bits I like, because if you place it in there, that would probably have happened. These kids don't know anything; they're brainwashed. They'd
Mm,
have had people down in front of them, and you do get these like bits of humanity when there's a shot where it's clearly the kid's point of view. You can see his like parents like legs sticking out on the dead bodies,
mm.
and that's what I like to do, because it makes you like sympathise with them incredibly slightly. Because obviously the kids are innocent, but the families aren't.
And I don't want to get into the whole political side of it in this review. We're just going to review this from like a purely from a film standpoint. But when you look at scenes like that, you can almost see that those kids are going to grow up to be the next generation of these leaders, and they'll have a reason for it because they witnessed their parents getting killed by the opposite side. And at the start as well, what I think this film does well is it shows the lengths that people will go to get Bin Laden and stop the terrorists. Like at the start, how that guy is being treated, you kind of watch it and go, "This is really degrading." And it's the bit where he like kind of walks him like a dog along the thing, and you're watching it and you're thinking, "This is kind of really sort of immoral and stuff." But he is a terrorist, and he does give them the information they need, which ultimately they get the result they want. So it balances that quite well, I think. But I think one of the biggest faults is that I just never really cared about any of the characters. It's like they're all too clinical. There's never any human moments with them where you get to know them as people. And I think in a film like this, especially where you more or less follow one core main character throughout of it with Jessica Chastain, I think she just needed a little more oomph to her role. Like, she's a great actress in it, but I think her character just needed a little bit more fleshing out, perhaps.
Yeah, it seemed very wooden and by the book. So it's like, oh,
Mm,
scared girl turns tough girl. We see stuff like that. That's like Aliens. We've seen that so many times on cinema. It happens a lot. And there's one moment which they could have built on where it's Jason Clarke's character. You see him feeding his monkeys. And that gives you a bit
mm,
of life to him, because at this point he's built up to be this like bad American guy. But then
mm.
it cuts to him like 10 minutes later, and he says he's leaving because they killed his monkeys. But it
Yeah,
doesn't really go into it, like who killed them and why would you leave because of that.
it's funny that he has an attachment to primates in this film as well.
Yeah, especially with him moving on to Dawn of the Apes, which he
Yeah,
was great in.
yeah, and I don't even know really if there's much else to talk about this film. I will say about the ending as well. Like, you get that bit is genuinely well directed and well acted. The whole storming of the building to get Bin Laden, and you get to the end where she looks at the body, she identifies the body, and then she's in a plane and she's just kind of looking, and then the film just ends. And I think that is a good place to end it because, like, I'm sure with the war in general, it was like, great, we've got Bin Laden, now what? So it almost is kind of an anticlimactic ending, but I'm sure that that's how it actually went anyway.
Yeah, exactly, because there's another three bits like that. That final scene's about 40 minutes long, but I sat there thinking, on the news stories you expected a raid like a minute, but
Mm.
you don't really think about the logistics of the sealing off the rooms, which they get done right. It would have been so easy for them to have had some like Team American moment. They were going in. You know what I mean? You could just picture like
Yeah.
all guns blazing, but they get it right. But the only it's a really stupid issue. But what I've always had the problem with this film was that it came out, I think, 1 year and a half after Bin Laden died,
Yeah.
and like, okay, they've rushed that for sure, but we still don't know the full details. Like, you always get these things where sooner or later some more stuff will pop up. Like, there's they got one of the Navy SEALs released a book saying he shot him in the face and all this, but there's no pictures, blah blah blah, and it just felt very rushed and very Oscar bait.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with that. Now, I'm sure this was a story that, Catherine Bigelow wanted to tell. And I think there was some definite effort put into this film and like research into the whole thing. So I've got no faults with that. But you're right, it does seem very Oscar bait, and you do get a lot of you get films like this every year that come out that are just sort of they come out around that time. They go in for the Oscar, and you just kind of they're going to get nominated in nearly every category just to be there. And that's the thing. Like, I can after we've done this review now, I don't think I would ever go back to this film to watch it again. I didn't watch this film when I was watching it for a second time for the review. I didn't actually watch it all in the first day. I split it up and over 2 days and watched it that way because I do think it is kind of a chore to sit from beginning to end with it. It does get very slow in parts. Um, but as I say, it's difficult to pinpoint why that is because the performances are really good. We never even talked about Mark Strong's character. He's not a huge role in the film, but Mark Strong's just amazing in everything he's in, and that guy needs to get offered more roles to get in more movies. He also has hair in this movie, which was really strange and quite funny seeing that because I'm not used to that at all.
And he's not a villain in two.
No, no, he's not. Mind you, he wasn't in Kingsman. I was expecting that in Kingsman, to be honest, and like turn traitor at the end.
And he also had hair in that, and not his London voice.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. Mark Strong. Like even if he's in a bad movie, he's always the best thing in that film.
Yeah.
But yeah, the performances are good. I do think it is well directed. Maybe it's a fault of the script. I'm not sure. It's difficult when you've got a true life story. You've obviously got to stick to that. But I do think that none of the people in it felt like people to me. And for a film like this, you've got to get me on board and invested in the characters to care about them and to what they're striving for. And obviously, I care what they are striving for, but everyone just seems sort of cold and clinical. And maybe that was the point of it. But even if that was the point of it, it doesn't make for an enjoyable watch.
No, that's basically the main opinion I've got. It just felt Oscar. The script, it could have been 10 pages short. I mean, on that paper, and to me, I look at that. I don't think they'd have had the right source material anyway. Like
Yeah,
they may have had a few of them interrogations. We don't know, but I just don't think it's as legit as it will come out in the next 20 years.
mm. So overall, would you recommend the movie?
It depends what you're into, but there's a lot of people that obviously like these films. If you're
Mm,
into modern day war films, then I'd say yes, just to give it a chance because it's quite different.
mm.
But watch it in Oscar season. That's the main thing. Because but when you're in Oscars, you're immediately rating them films higher than you do now. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it all depends on your personal preference of this.
yeah, I'll completely agree with that. If you're into sort of modern history and you're into this side of the whole behind the scenes of war and the politics of it all, I would definitely give it a watch because I think you'd probably enjoy it. I think partly the reason I didn't like this film as much as many other people did around the time is that it's just not my kind of movie, to be honest. Like these aren't ones that I go into. Now I'm not saying that I went into this movie with a bad attitude because every movie I sit down and think, okay, fair enough, try and impress me as long as it's not Terminator Genesis because I will be going into that movie with a bad attitude. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's not really a movie I gravitate towards. I watched it. I probably can hand on heart say I won't watch it again, but I do think there's good aspects to the movie, and I think it is put together well. But I think, as you said, it comes down to preference ultimately as to whether you'll enjoy this movie or not.
Yeah, and another final thought: if you want to watch some war films recently, Hurt Locker is better than this. They're both completely different though, different aspects of war. It was nice to see it, but I think it's done too early, and it hampered what could have been an amazing film.
How about I don't want to like we'll get onto Iron Giant review in a minute, but what about American Sniper? I haven't actually seen that. Is that
I've
a better film than this? Would you say?
Yeah, American Sniper I really, really, really enjoy, and before anyone says it's not American propaganda.
Mm.
It goes over the PTSD, all of it. It is not this propaganda stuff. People are doing that for Facebook likes. That's a good, solid film because you don't get too much action. You get maybe 3 or 4 action set pieces,
Mm.
and it gives you a good story, and it's very good compared to his book. It's even got the prologue they use in the book as the opening scene.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to give it a watch. I need to catch up with a few of those Oscar films, and that's definitely one of them because I heard, just massive acclaim from that film, so I will get round to that at some point. But now we'll get on to our second review for Film Club today, which was from this week. This was my pick, which was The Iron Giant, directed by Brad Bird from 1999. Reasons why I picked this film, obviously, we both gave our top animated films of all time. So it had to be animation related, and you actually, unbeknownst to me, mentioned Iron Giant, and that was one of your honourable mentions, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of these films where I had it on video when I was younger. I saw it loads of times. I just hadn't seen it in years and years, and it's
Mm.
obviously with Tomorrowland, Brad Bird. Obviously, I kind of was leaning towards it, and then it's one of them that I've wanted to watch for a while. I just haven't been able to get around to it. So luckily I have, because it was one of my favourite animated films growing up.
Yeah, and I think the last time I actually watched this film was when I read the book at school as part of the class, which I think was around year three. So that was a long, long time ago. To be honest, I remember the video adverts, the trailers for the film on other videos for other films more than I do the actual full film. So it was really cool going back and watching it, and I actually just got done watching it probably within like the last hour or so. Um, so yeah, why don't we just get into it then? So the plot, it takes place in the Cold War. Very simple story. A giant, well, an iron giant falls from the sky and is befriended by a young kid called Hogarth. It's almost like E.T. I would describe this movie. You have this bond between the kid and the alien, and you have the government coming after them, wanting to destroy the Iron Giant because they see it as a threat. And it's just this relationship and this bond that's created between the kid and his giant. Um, as I say, I hadn't seen this film in ages, so most of this film was new to me, really. Um, First off, I want to just like talk about the actual animation in it because I didn't remember the animation being this beautiful in the film. It looks like it blends a really unique style of sort of 2D, but it also looks like it's got some CG or it looks 2D, but it also looks 3D at the same time. It's difficult to describe how it looks, but it definitely has a unique look to it that I haven't seen in many other animated films.
Yeah, and what got me a lot is where it have this shot. I think there's always one in the house. Then it'll kind of zoom out on the same shot and kind of move left to the barn, which is you don't
Mm.
really see that a lot with 2D animated films, which was really cool. Because on the first ones, I know you're into it a lot more than me. I don't really tend to notice the animation. It's normally to me it's just 2D or 3D. But this
Mm.
this was one when you could really start to appreciate like how much effort was put into it.
Yeah, and loads of effort was put into it, and it's the voice cast is great because sometimes when you see an animated film, they'll just get celebrity voice actors in, and you'll watch it and you'll easily identify which celebrity is voicing that character. Whereas in this, the voices complement the character so well that you just see them as characters. Like I didn't even know Jennifer Aniston was in this movie. She plays Hogarth's mum. Like I didn't watch that and go, "Oh, that's Jennifer Aniston just playing a character." That it was the character of the mum. And when you said about how much effort was put into it, it is a shame because it was done on a budget of 70 million and it only got about 31 million back. Um, I'd have to look at what other films came out around the time that this was released. I'm assuming that it was up against quite a lot of films, 1999 perhaps, or maybe the marketing wasn't that good, or it was up against other major name animated films.
Off the top of my head, I can't. Obviously, I don't need to remember the date. With 99, Matrix and Star Wars dominated that year. So
Mm.
if it's got a May release, then that's probably why. But I think what it definitely has done, it's grown since as a cult film because you get a lot of people asking Brad Bird questions. If you see any of his interviews, always an Iron Giant question come up. And what I was saying to you earlier on was that I just can't believe there's not a Blu-ray release yet. And I was just digging some research on it.
Yeah.
And they've said before, he said just before Tomorrowland that the studios just want a single disc, but he wants like a sort of collector's or like an anniversary edition, which he's pushing towards, which would be
Mm.
great because it's got the cult following to get the sales on that. But it's one of them.
Yeah, and
It's just unexpected they haven't done it yet.
yeah, no, when you told me, I was shocked that it wasn't already out. I own this film. We talked about this just at the end of our last review. It was a box set of a VHS. It came with a little figure of the Iron Giant, and you got the book as well in like this big thick VHS case. That's the one I've got. But it would be nice to see a two-disc edition. Especially, I love behind-the-scenes stuff, and I think this would be quite fascinating to see about this film. And as you said, if it's got the cult following now, you may as well do it. I thought it was already out, or if it wasn't, it would at least come out because of Tomorrowland. And going to Tomorrowland really quickly, that was a great scene where they go into that sort of comic book store, and you see little Iron Giant figures in the background, like Brad Bird
Yeah,
peddling his own wares. That was great.
especially as obviously this isn't a Disney film. Tomorrowland was, so you would
No.
have had to get the rights for that, which is fair enough because I know they're playing their Star Wars stuff. Also, I've just had a quick look. It came out on the same day as The Sixth Sense, and I know that back then The Sixth Sense made a lot of money. I think about 700 if I remember.
Yeah, and obviously everyone says that that's Shyamalan's best movie, and I think it is on many lists as one of the greatest films of all time. I haven't actually seen that movie.
No, same. I just know the quote that I see dead people.
Yeah, but also this was done by Warner Brothers Animation, was very much trying to copy Disney at that point, and I think obviously 1999, Disney's already an established name. All throughout the 90s, you had your massive, massive hitters from Disney. So maybe this just kind of came out, and audiences were like, it's not Disney, we're not interested." I'm really not sure why it didn't do well, to be honest. But it's nice that it's found an audience. But I think we should get into the movie a little bit more now. Um, do you want to move on to like what we liked about it, or do you want to go into the character of the Iron Giant himself? Because he is a very, very, he is the title character.
Yeah, it's kind of what we like, and he's his character. Obviously he's the main one. He's great when he's in it, because I know this is a horrible comparison, but he reminds me of Chappie. I know you haven't
Yeah.
seen it where he's this new to it. Obviously, this isn't stupid and this is an animation and stuff. But it's like, for once, he's funny when they're intending it rather than these out and out jokes where he just has these moments. They might kind of get you as the emotion he brings to it, because he does care for them. And
Mm.
obviously,
And I'm. Oh, go
I
on.
was going to
Sorry.
say, obviously, at the end, there's a big scene there, but you get these snippets where he's kind of upset with himself and confused because he's starting to remember the guns and stuff, and he doesn't like it because he's got these connections to the humans.
Mm. And I think that's definitely one of the strongest bits of the films. I love stories like this. The whole either robot or alien it's trying to learn. Obviously, stuff like Wall-E or Short Circuit, or even E.T. That's what I think this film closely resembles the most. Um, yeah, and he's such an endearing character, and it just goes to show that a character doesn't have to say much for us to care about them. I think that works most in animated films because there are moments in this film that are genuinely really, really emotional. And as you said, it does a lot of good stuff with this conflict he's got in his mind. And for example, I didn't even remember that they did the whole Superman thing. I've obviously only seen this film once, much towards the time it came out. So when he brings out Action Comics issue 1, the original Superman comic. I was geeking out a little bit about that, but I love that whole thing, and that theme of Superman continues throughout the entire movie up until the very ending, which I'm not gonna lie is an incredibly, incredibly emotional ending to the film.
Yeah, it's one of them where it's one of the few that gets you, not like tears and stuff, but you can like sense it. Like I'm quite not prone with it, but it's very easy for me not to care, and this is one of the few times when you do. Because normally, I've said it before, I really despise like the young characters,
Mm.
and Hogarth he's not that bad, but he's not too over the top at times.
No, and there's an aspect of this film I always hate this in movies if they do it wrong. The bit where they first see that the Iron Giant reacts hostile to guns, and it's always that classic misunderstanding just before the third act of a film where everyone's mopey, they always go their separate ways, and you know they're gonna all everything's gonna be fine at the end, but they really get round that quickly. I was expecting like in any other film that would drag on for about 20 minutes, but this film it's like next scene they realise why he does it. It's because he doesn't like guns, he doesn't like being surrounded by weapons on him, and they realise the problem he has with that and try and prevent it in the span of about 5 minutes. And this is only a short film, so obviously, but I've seen loads of other animated films where I just can't deal with that story trope. It just irritates me.
Yeah, and it times it well with this because is it talking about the scene before he goes off with the Americans when he just kind of loses it?
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah. This is at like the trash. Where Hogarth's
Yeah,
playing with him with a toy gun. Yeah,
because
but yeah.
it's kind of when the military come, his sort of like head pops back out, and suddenly he's all militarized and stuff, which kind of worked well because they didn't keep throughout the film. They don't elaborate on the like the bump on his head, why he's out. Normally you'd get that in like, these modern films, but you kind
Mm.
of didn't really expect it until it pops back in. Then it happens. You're like, oh, now he's back to who he should be.
Yeah, and the Iron Giant's just so likable. Going back to Vin Diesel, obviously now we've had Guardians of the Galaxy, where he almost plays a very similar character. He's almost like a big lovable dog, really, isn't he? Like Groot or the Iron Giant. And I'm just reading here. This is pretty interesting. The person who was originally considered to do the voice for the Iron Giant was going to be Peter Cullen, who's the voice of Optimus Prime.
Oh, see, I could sense that, but then I
Yeah,
think you'd have so many people saying, "Oh, it's Transformers."
and I think with Peter Cullen, I don't know if he would, but he strikes me as a voice that needs more lines and monologues and stuff. Whereas the Iron Giant, the entire strength of his character is that he's learning. He only says a few little words here and there.
Yeah,
I think it works best with Vin Diesel.
and with Peter Cullen, he seems one that you don't want the sort of, obviously it's Vin Diesel's voice, but there's like say 80% robotics in post production. Whereas
Mm,
with Peter Cullen, you see him in Transformers, the old stuff, the new stuff. This is very much 90% him, 10% robot.
mm. So I guess we could go into favourite scenes and stuff really as well. I want to talk about the sort of villain character of the film. I love Kent Mansley, the government agent. I think he's when I was first watching it today, the voice sounded a lot like Mel Gibson's character from Pocahontas. And I thought, did Mel Gibson do the voice of that? A quick Wikipedia search later. No, it's Christopher McDonald. But I've always been a big fan of villains, and I just think he's hilarious.
Oh, he's a great one because he's clearly this like doofus at the army where he's like on the phone and
Mm.
like he's like we need to do it and his general just doesn't give a crap. And then
Yeah.
he's like him cutting and the general slowly putting on hold. Then he's just there shouting and stuff, and he comes across as this like clueless guy that just wants to do well. But then at the end, he's like fully evil, where he lies saying that Hogarth's been killed and everything, and you kind of get the transition from the useless guy to this like pure evil villain, which was great because he didn't have too much of him. He got the right amount of screen time for that role.
Mm. And I guess some of my other favourite scenes, they're mostly with the Iron Giant, to be honest. I love the scene where he first meets Hogarth, and Hogarth's teaching him the words for rock and for tree, and he's mimicking what he's doing. I love stuff like that in films. But obviously it's got to be the ending with Superman, where you first learn that he can fly.
Ah, that's a great scene. My favourite is purely because it's like a meme to me. Is when he's at the scrapyard and he's like, "We want him to stay with you," and he just
Mm.
stands up, pours the tea down, and just goes into the house. Then it just fades to black. It's like 37 minutes later, and I just thought that was hilarious. Like that's one of my favourite moments. But the whole like scrapyard scenes, the whole pace. I know it's a very short film. It's like an hour and 20,
Mm.
but each scene it doesn't drag. I don't feel that at all once throughout. You kind of want to see more of the film, which is great, and you're never given too much in each location they go to as well.
Yeah, it's a nice little charming story, really. I think it's completely the right length for it, to be honest. I think any longer, and it may have dragged a little bit, perhaps, I don't know. Any shorter and you'd have been taken away from it. I think it does exactly what it needs to with the time it's given. And one thing, I think this is probably Brad Bird's direction, especially with his animated films. All his characters feel like real people. Like, obviously, he did The Incredibles as well. And you don't see them as animated characters really, you see them as real people. And I think that obviously with this set in the Cold War, you've got the whole power struggle, and everyone's anxious and what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Sort of all caught up in their own little worlds and exaggerate things like the threat that's at hand.
Yeah,
So I think I don't know. I can't remember if the book is actually set in this time as well, because obviously I was in year three when I read the book, and I think the book's quite different to this film actually. But I think that works for it. Obviously, you got the whole Sputnik thing at the start. Yeah, it just all works so well. It's a really really nice little film. It's nice to see that it's got a cult audience now, and it's picking up a bit more fan base. Um, so I guess we don't really need to answer this, but would you recommend the film?
definitely. It's definitely an animated film of all ages. I mean, obviously I loved it when I was younger. Then it's
Mm,
one of the few that I watched it when I was older and really appreciate it, especially for the backstory. There's a lot of adult themes in there,
mm,
especially with that Cold War. Like you shouldn't like. There's the whole nuclear war thing, where it's kind of taking the piss. Where if you get bombed, you hide in your table. Like I always remember that scene from when I was younger, But then the
Yeah.
reality is when you get nuked, you're gone, and it was just kind of interesting to see like how it's a comedic zone to it.
Mm. And it's like that bit where Kent tries to drive off at the end. He doesn't want to stay there for the bomb, and the Iron Giant just like slams his hand down straight away, just blocks the car. And...
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favourites, and what I like the fact of this, although it didn't get its money back, Disney clearly saw this, or Pixar, I'll say, and they kind of gave, obviously Brad Bird did The Incredibles, and he started to get hits with them now. He's been making money, except Tomorrowland. He's done really well for himself, which is great because you don't really get a lot of animated directors these days that make it to live action.
No, and with this film as well, I'm kind of glad it didn't get a sequel as well, because how the film ends, it could very easily have gone straight into a sequel. But I think that it's a perfect ending for the film. As I say, it's a nice little film. Perfect. It's 87 minutes long. Boom. Gets in, gets out. Does exactly what it needs to. I'd definitely recommend this movie. It was really, really fun watching it properly now, because obviously it had been ages since I'd seen it. Picked up on a lot of things I didn't remember. Definitely a film for all ages, because parents, I'm sure, would love. I love it. I'm 22. I love the film. Kids all love it for the giant, and I think that adults in our age will pick up on the themes of it more. Yeah, definitely give your support to this film, and try and get that fan base growing for it, because I want a Blu-ray of this, a 2-disc Blu-ray on this film.
Oh, definitely. I'd love. Obviously, I've got the VHS as well with the booking model.
Yeah.
I would love it if they had like a sort of a Blu-ray and you get a little model with him, and maybe the bolt. They could do so much with it. I think that's what Brad Bird wants, though, because you will get the sales. And it's a film that if they re-released it, there was talk of it before Tomorrowland came out as well. If they re-released that at the cinema, say October half term and all the kids are off, that will probably make its money back. To be fair, because there'll be a lot of young people that haven't seen this film and might not ever see it, which is a shame. Because I remember my class at primary school saw it a few times as well, like on rainy days. So it's one of them where I think if you gave it to younger audience, they'd love it today.
I think people remember the name of it. Like, oh, do you remember Iron Giant? And it'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that movie. That's the one with, yeah, I remember. I think it's got that aspect to it. I don't think many people actually remember the film from beginning to end. That was kind of similar to me. But yeah, definitely, it's on DVD, I assume now as well.
Oh
it
yeah,
has to be on.
Yeah, that's what I was watching mine off.
Yeah, get it on DVD. Whatever, watch this film, give your support to it, give your support to Brad Bird, because I think he's a good director, and especially for animation, he's one of the best directors for animation at the minute, I would say. Yeah, I think I've said pretty much everything I can on Iron Giant, unless you've got anything else you want to add on.
I think that's everything I've got to say. Just, this is a great film. It's worth watching if you've never seen it before.
Yeah, cool. No, I'm glad we picked this one this week. But yeah. Follow us on Facebook if you like this review at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. You can find us at Twitter at twitter.com/cinema_savvy, or we're on Letterboxd as well at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy. Be sure to come back Monday for our main show, where it's going to be a big one. We're going to be reviewing all 4 of the Terminator films in anticipation for Terminator Genisys, so I'm hoping we can cut that review down a bit, because with 4 films there's a lot to say about each one of them, but we'll get through it. You've got a lot of watching to do for that though, so...
I've got to find time between Arkham and Terminator.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry that we had to record this tonight, because you've been playing Arkham Knight all day, of which I'm very envious of, because I don't have a PS4 to play it, but I'm going to let you get back and finish the game, because I know you're near the end. Yeah, don't give me any spoilers.
I won't, don't worry.
We should, when I get round to playing that, we should do a review on that as well.
Jeez, you can't so soon.
Yeah, no,
Battlefront.
I'm really tempted, and especially if we start that other podcast up around December time, then it will be kind of necessary to have played that game before then.
Very good point.
Yeah, but anyway. This is a film podcast. We'll get away from the video games. Yep, be sure to come back Monday for that Terminator review. And until then, see you next time.